The Nintendo Switch is one of Nintendo's most interesting consoles that they've made in terms of physical games due to the fact that it uses cartridges on this system. And obviously I own a lot of Nintendo Switch games. And one of the most interesting things about the Switch is due to the fact that it uses cartridges, a lot of games go out of print very fast due to Nintendo's restrictions on how many cartridges you can order at once. So we have seen a lot of games go out of print fast and some pretty ridiculous prices for games that definitely should not be that high, which means we have to do another one of these videos. Potentially the last one that I do as we head into the Nintendo Switch 2 era. Y'all's favorite video series I've done, the top 10 games to buy for the Nintendo Switch before they become super rare / expensive, whatever it is we title these videos. Y'all love these videos to death. You guys constantly ask for it. By the way, guys, we are super close to 17,000 subscribers. Like, we are literally super duper close. If you guys could do me a big favor, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We've been doing Switch videos literally every single day, and it would mean a lot if we could hit that before I go into New York City at the end of May for the Nintendo Switch 2, because we're gonna film in New York, be a part of the Switch line as we wait outside the Nintendo store for Switch 2. So we'd greatly appreciate it. If not, it's all good. Enjoy the video. And I think this could be the last one that I make. I haven't decided yet. Just one of those things that's kind of weird to be doing it as we head to Switch 2. I don't know yet, but what's important is I have 10 games to show off where we are speculating on how they could become out of print and end up expensive. These are kind of videos where we're just speculating. I don't want these videos to be factual. However, we've gotten a lot of things right in the past with these videos. But again, this is all speculative. We're not confirming anything. I don't want anyone being like, Max, I bought 10 copies of whatever I say in here. I didn't pay my house rent because I wanted to buy these games because I knew this was going to pay for my future house. I don't know if we have anybody like that. Don't be doing anything like this. Let's jump straight into this top 10 list. Our first one is going to be one that normally I would not be putting in these videos. However, with the constant news that is happening with the Nintendo Switch 2 and its physical games, I feel like there is a pretty good possibility people are going to be buying this game up for the Switch 1 due to the Switch 2. And that game is none other than Sonic Shadow Generation. Now, normally I don't like to put big games such as this on a list like this, especially when I know that this is something that was coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 in some form. And you may be asking yourself, well, Max, why do you have it on the list now then? What has changed? What's happened to where you need to put this on the top 10 games buy list? And the reason why I've put this game on the buy list is due to the fact that there is a Nintendo Switch 2 physical copy coming to the system. However, it is a game key card. Now, we've always talked about how game key cards are the new thing that all the developers seem to be using because as of right now, it looks like the Switch 2, rumors at least, that there's only 2 options for cartridges, and that's why a lot of games have ended up being game key cards. And Sonic is one that is going to be a game key card, which is very surprising to see, as Sega has always done a really good job of putting their titles on the Switch, fully on cartridge. Pretty much every release they've done for Nintendo has always had the game on the cartridge. And I feel like now that Sonic is coming to the Switch 2, I've already seen people say, hey, I'm not buying the Switch 2 edition of the game, I'm just going to go out of my way to buy the Switch 1 edition. I feel like we're going to be at a point where Sega's not going to be making any more of this as soon as we jump into the Nintendo Switch 2. And I think there's going to be more of a demand to own this version of the game rather than the Switch 2 edition due to the fact of it being a game key card. So I would definitely be on the lookout for this. This game goes on sale sometimes for about 30 bucks. That's the cheapest I've seen it. It's still a relatively new game. So probably the cheapest you're going to find it is 30 bucks other than its regular retail price, which I think is 50. Next one on the list is Life is Strange Double Exposure. Now, the game is not that great, but it's very surprising that this game even came out on the Nintendo Switch. And I think what's even also more surprising is that a physical copy of this game exists. And in fact, it's all on the cartridge, which surprises me. Square Enix doesn't typically do a great job of putting games on the Switch physically, and if they do make it, they always do something weird with their cartridges. However, this, I believe, is the first physical Life is Strange game out there for the Switch that it's all on cartridge. But due to the fact that this game was overall not liked, I don't believe people are going to be buying the Switch version, because the Switch version came out about 4 to 5 months later compared to the other versions of the game. Now, I do think because of that, this one, out of all the Life is Strange games, is going to be probably the hardest one to find. I expect there was a very low print run for this game, as I'm sure the pre-orders were at an all-time low at this game. They've already talked about how bad this game has sold, and I definitely expect the Switch version to be even worse in sales. In fact, I've seen places start to get rid of this game, and this is the type of stuff that ends up always being harder to find Switch games. So I think Life is Strange Double Exposure, if you can find it near you, I think now is the time to pick this up. This is one that I do think will end up being one of the more harder Switch games to get, especially as we go into the Switch 2. I don't know if Square Enix is going to care about upgrading this game, and if people are going to even care about a Switch 2 upgrade of Life is Strange Double Exposure. Switch port's actually kind of impressive though. The next one on the list is going to be Guilty Gear Survive. Now, the Nintendo Switch edition has literally just came out a few months ago. And this is one of those games that I am not surprised that it came to the Switch, but I'm surprised how late it came into the Nintendo Switch cycle. And because of that, I do think it's going to play into a factor of its physical game being harder to find. In fact, I struggled to find the physical game out there in the wild. Actually, I was checking GameStops every now and then just to see if it was there, and then I only saw it in the wild when I was at a New York store, at like a retro game store. That was the only way that I was able to find this game. And even then, the guys told me they weren't able to order many copies of the game. This game seems to be kind of hard to find, but the good news is it's still kind of retail value. I don't think it's going to go up in value, probably until later into the Nintendo Switch 2, especially if they update this game for Switch 2, which I think is more than likely going to be happening. I expect that if they make a Switch 2 edition, we're going to be in the same boat, that there's a game key card. And, you know, in all honesty, they might not even do a physical edition for the Switch 2. They might just be like, hey, when you buy the Switch 1 edition, you'll get a free upgrade of the Switch 2 edition of Guilty Gear. I think this is definitely one to be on the lookout for. Not to mention, it's coming from Arc Master System. A lot of the games that they've published on Switch have kind of been all over the place in terms of value. So this is probably one that you're going to be on the lookout for if you want for your collection of Switch games. Next up on the list is going to be Yuiio Early Days Collection. Now, this is one of the ones that I was very surprised that it even came out, because this is kind of an unusual thing to see happen with the Yuiio series. And I'm glad to see this happen because, one, this is so cool that they have a game that has all of the older games, because a lot of those GBA Yuiio games were absolutely phenomenal. And they were brought back onto Nintendo and PlayStation. I think it's even on PC as well. But what gets even weirder about this Konami release is that the physical edition of the game only happened for Nintendo Switch, which is very surprising considering that the Nintendo Switch is the most expensive to produce. So I would have thought they would have wanted to go ahead and make a PlayStation edition, if anything. But this is one to definitely be on the lookout for, because as I said, this is something that you don't see every now and then. Not to mention, Konami doesn't really like making physical editions of games, let alone Switch games. As you've seen with most of their titles, it's not on the cartridge. It's just barely on a cartridge. If they have something there, it's just a little bit. So this is one to be on the lookout for just for that. This is a very unusual and particular release, and I bet as soon as we get to the Nintendo Switch 2, this is also going to be another one that people are going to want to get their hands on, because Konami is probably not making a Switch 2 edition, and they're not going to really need to, but I'm sure people would like to play this via backwards compatibility on the Switch 2. This is a newer release, and I have seen where many places only got 1 to 2 copies of this game. So definitely be on the lookout for this if you have one near you. This next one, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about this, considering this is already a reprinted version out there, but I have reasoning to why it's on this list. And that game is none other than The Messenger. Now, you might be asking yourself, Max, why do you have this game? It's already kind of an expensive game. The limited run version is, and it's probably gone down since this new reprinted version. But the reason why I have this here is due to the constant evolving situation with Nintendo Switch 2 physical games. It really seems like a lot of things are going with this game keycard path due to the fact of Nintendo's cartridge space issues, at least from rumors at least. But I feel like these rumors are true, just seeing some of the games that we are seeing become game keycards, like Sonic, that does not make sense to me. The rumors are it's 8 gigabytes or 64 gigabytes. And Devolver does so many things for the Nintendo Switch when it comes to their physical games. I think even Devolver talked about how so much of their sales are physical games. And just in general, a lot of their sales have come from the Nintendo Switch. And I feel like as we jump into the Nintendo Switch 2, with The Messenger just coming out, the reprinted version, I don't think Devolver is going to be reprinting this game anytime soon for Nintendo Switch 2. And I think that's going to make people buy this up pretty fast. In fact, I think a lot of Devolver titles could end up being very expensive for the Nintendo Switch. It's going to be interesting to see what the future of physical games are looking like for Switch 2, as it's not looking bright due to these storage issues of cartridges because of 2 options that Nintendo's giving to developers, supposedly. So for that, that's why I have The Messenger on here. I'm not 100% sure though. Like I said, it is just me speculating. This is a little bit of a different one than I would put on the list. This next one I'm kind of putting on the tinfoil hat, and I'll explain my reasoning behind it. Next up, we have Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Now, the reason why I have this on the list is this is obviously a way later Nintendo Switch title, and it's a title that really no one asked for. There's obviously going to be someone in the comments who's like, hey, I really wanted this game on Nintendo Switch, but a majority of the people did not ask for this game and was very confused to why it even came to Nintendo Switch. And due to that, I believe this is probably not sold very well for Nintendo. I think it sold right at a little over 1 million copies, which for Kirby, that's not the greatest number. It's still a decent number, don't get me wrong. However, compared to all the other titles that was landed onto the Nintendo Switch for Kirby, this one sold the least amount. And I think a lot of the later Switch releases that has come has not sold as well, because I think some of the people are just like, hey, why does this game exist? Do we really want this? This is just one we did not ask for. And because of that, I think that is going to play into the factor of people wanting to get this later into the Nintendo Switch 2 cycle. As we jump into this next generation, I do think a lot of people are going to want to get first-party Nintendo games from the first Switch. And I think a lot of people are going to be gravitating towards stuff like this. And I do think this is one of those that will go up, kind of like how Twilight Princess HD. It's kind of one of the more expensive Wii U titles. I feel like this could be following the same track record. However, Twilight Princess HD did not start becoming expensive till way later into like probably the middle of the Switch cycle. So I feel like maybe as we get to the middle of the Switch 2 cycle, I feel like this Kirby game is going to be one that people are going to be trying to buy, especially with backwards compatibility. On top of that, there might be a Switch 2 free update happening. We've already seen Nintendo start to update their games for free. I think this is one to be on the lookout for. I could be wrong, but I feel pretty confident in this one. Next up, I have the Plucky Squire. Now, I definitely feel a Nintendo Switch 2 free update is going to be happening. If y'all saw my review on this game, I talked about how the Switch port is pretty unplayable. I had so many times that the game crashed, the frame rate was all over the place once you get halfway through the game. It is a disaster. And I definitely know that once that Switch 2 update drops, this is going to be something people are going to want to buy immediately because there's people that are going to always want the physical copy. And I don't expect, as of right now, to see Devolver re-release a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of this game physically out there with the game keycard issue, unless somehow they get that solved. Maybe they'll do a release of that, but I feel like the fact that they just released this, I don't see them wanting to release another edition of the game due to the fact that Switch cartridges are the most expensive thing to produce when it comes to physical media out there. So this is one that I would definitely be on the lookout for. Just in general, I feel like this is going to be a highly demanded game because it's honestly a great game. It's just horrible on the Switch. And I think once that Switch 2 update, because I know it's definitely going to happen, once it drops, people are going to be buying this left and right, because I have seen people avoid buying this game due to how it runs on the Switch. This next one, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just throwing it out there because as I continue to play this game, I'm surprised a physical copy even came out for something like this, and I feel like the obscurity of this game is going to want to have people to own it, because we've seen a lot of obscure titles end up being on the Switch and always being low print run, and I feel like with who produced the physical copy of this, there's probably a very low print of this game already. That game is none other than Gory the Cuddly Carnage. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. It says Gory. It is definitely a gory game. Don't let this cat on the cover fool you. This is not a friendly game. I was not expecting to play what I played when I did, but the game is absolutely fun. I'm actually very impressed by the Switch version, but we're not reviewing the game. We're talking about the physical edition of this game. Very surprised that a physical copy came out. This is something that you don't typically see have happen all the time, especially I think this game came out a few years ago and the physical copy just dropped. I think the Switch version just recently came out and that probably plays a factor into it. Kind of the same boat. I feel like a Switch 2 edition could be happening and they're not going to make a physical copy, most likely with the issues that are going on, but who knows? Could be wrong here. The good news is this is like a $30 game right now and it just came out. I think this is definitely to be one on the lookout for, as it's just one of those games that fits with the pattern of games becoming out of print, and I feel pretty confident saying that this had a low print run and I don't expect it to get restocks, because as we talked about on this channel before with how Nintendo does the cartridges, restocks are very hard to do. So definitely be on the lookout for Gory, especially if you want a fun game. All right, this next one is Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. Now you might be asking yourself, Max, why do you have this? This is probably a more common game to get, and you are correct. It is probably a pretty common game to get as it's a phenomenal game. It sold very well. However, we do know that Nintendo is done printing this game through a lot of articles out there. So you might be asking yourself once again, why do I have it on this list? Again, the Nintendo Switch 2. We know through leaks and really going through the code of Xenoblade X that there's a 60 FPS mode built into the game, but obviously the Switch 1 does not have the 60 FPS mode because the Xenoblade X update is probably coming to the Nintendo Switch 2 that lets you play that game at 60 FPS. And when that update gets announced and dropped, I expect that Monolith Soft is going to go back through all of their other Xenoblade titles and update it to where it is going to be at the max possible settings for Nintendo Switch 2. So I really think a lot of these Xenoblade games are going to be really wanted once the Switch 2 comes around, especially, like I said, people are going to gravitate towards first-party games a lot more now as we jump a few years into Switch 2, not to mention the backwards compatibility. These games are going to be a lot more in demand, and because of that, they're not going to go down in price, similar to how the Wii U games went down in price. It's going to be probably the opposite. I could see a lot of these first-party Nintendo games be more in demand, and especially with Switch updates happening, with a lot of them being free, this is going to be one that gets updated, I feel like, and most likely not to have a updated physical copy of the game, because we've seen that Nintendo is updating a lot of games with no brand new physical copy. Similar, I think, to like Mario Odyssey, that's getting a Switch 2 update, no physical copy. There's a whole wide list of games, and I think Xenoblade's going to be on that list in probably a year or two. All right, the next one I have on my list is the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Now, you might be asking yourself, Max, why do you have that one? That's definitely an out there one. There's actually a few reasons why we have this on here. And one of them is probably a thing that y'all don't even know, which is a weird thing that happened with this game. But for whatever reason, Nintendo actually published the Switch version of this. I'm not even joking. I know someone's going to point out, but their logo's not on the side. That gets even weirder. So Nintendo actually published Doom 2017 and Skyrim for the Nintendo Switch. And the reason how we know that is if you look at your copy right now, the back of it, guess what it says? You see that? Do you see that? It says published by Nintendo. What? Okay, so I do think that is one of the big reasons why this game is going to be sought after, because there's already people talking about the published Nintendo games to own for like the first party stuff, because I think the first party stuff, anything published by Nintendo, is going to be the things that people are going to want. And people are talking about how Skyrim and Doom are on that list. Another reason, Nintendo Switch 2. Once again, we've already seen that the Anniversary Edition exists within the Switch 1, and they didn't do an updated physical copy of that version. And I feel like with the Switch 2, they're probably going to do some sort of big update to the game to where you can play the updated visuals, Anniversary Edition, that type of stuff on Switch 2. And if they do make an updated physical copy of the game, Nintendo is more than likely not publishing it. It's going to be Microsoft. So there's probably, there's probably a good chance that a Nintendo Switch 2 physical copy exists and will come out later. But what's going to end up happening is that it's going to be a game key card, because we definitely know that it's not even Monolith stuff. That's Bethesda and Xbox. They're not going to pay for that, which is going to have people to want to own this version of the game since it's the only physical copy out there, and they'll have it to where people can pay for the upgrade, essentially. Kind of like how you can already do that for the Anniversary Edition. That's why I have this on my list. I know it's weird. I also think just due to the fact that it's an early title for the Switch could help it. But my main reason is the fact that Nintendo has published this release, which for people that are trying to get the Nintendo published set games, this is going to be on that list of games to own. Guys, that is my top 10 games you should buy before they become super expensive / rare, whatever it is that I title these videos. Like I said, I do think this is potentially the last one. I feel like I have to do one more though, because I believe if I'm doing my math correctly, this is part 9. So I feel like it makes sense to end on a part 10. And if we do a part 10, we're going to be released in the middle of the Switch 2. So from my point of view, it's kind of weird to be doing it when we have the Switch 2 here. Maybe I should be focusing on Switch 2 games to buy before they become rare. But at the same time, how many of those physical games are going to exist? Is there going to be many to even do a top 10 list of that? Does it make sense to continue the Switch 1 stuff? I don't know. I'm not final on it. I'm not saying that I'm ending the series, but I'm also not saying that I'm continuing the series. I would love to hear how you guys feel about it in the comments, because I know y'all are very passionate about this series and all that good stuff. So I would definitely want to hear what you guys have to say. Guys, make sure to backslash that subscribe button, like the video, check out the Twitter, check out the Instagram, check out the Discord server, all the good stuff in the description below. I will see you guys in the very next video. Peace.